Hi, and welcome to Comics Chat. I am here with comics creator Snake, the creator of The View from the Phoenix Trees. Thanks for hopping on with me.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Oh, great. Yeah, so you are the creator of The View of the Phoenix Trees, which is live on Kickstarter. It's a really cool project. Do you wanna tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So it started, it's the germination of the idea was just
Oh no,
that I'm half Asian. Oh, is
oh,
that
oh
okay?
no, we're frozen. Okay, you're
Oh,
back.
hello. Hello. Um, so the germination of the idea was just because I would always hear stories about my grandparents and where they came from and where my the Asian part of my family came from. And my mum's Vietnamese. So my grandfather is Chinese, my grandmother is Vietnamese. They met there, they created a large family over in Vietnam. The Vietnam War happened, they lived through the Vietnam War. After that period in time, China fell out with Vietnam. Everyone who was Chinese got kicked out of the country and vice versa. They lost a house, temple, flat, had to live on a boat for 6 months, got kicked out
Wow.
of the country. And there's actually the historical record of these people. This mass exodus from Vietnam, people just being kicked out, and these people called the Ho people, the boat people. So then they managed to they were placed in a detention center in
Wow.
Macau for like 2 years, and then finally settling in the UK. So I always heard that story, and I
Yeah.
was just like one day just kind of went, "Wow, this would be perfect for comics." I got really into comics. I started writing screenplays, started writing theater, and just really focused on comics. And I had this job at the time where I was like, I was basically like an office manager,
Mhm.
and I just did nothing all day. I literally gave people Wi-Fi codes, and so I just sat down and just churned out four
Wow.
issues of a mini series, which
That's
is
awesome.
yeah. So yeah,
Wow. Very cool. Um, and one of the things that you said on the Kickstarter page was that it kind of it gave you a different insight into your own family's history, which I think is so cool.
yeah. Because I mean, I'm not really that close to my family. I mean, my immediate family, my mum and dad, yeah, sure, but like my family's massive. They
Hmm.
live everywhere. So as well as settling in the UK, they settled in Vietnam, in China, in America, in Sweden, all these different places. So it's really difficult to keep track of people, and
Yeah.
also I don't speak Vietnamese. So
Hmm.
it's just I just never taught it. So there is already a language barrier there. Now with cousins, it's really easy and it's fine. With people who speak English, it's fine. But then I do have other cousins and people who don't. Like for instance, this is kind of an interesting, and it's also a really interesting kind of piece because it's steeped in reality. It's historical kind of like biography, as it were, whatever you want to call it. But at the same time, it's also fictional because obviously there's mythological elements in there involved as well. But also because I didn't know my grandfather. He
Hmm.
was just he only spoke Vietnamese. He would
Yeah.
sit and play mahjong, smoking cigarettes, and then smile at me, and I just waved back, and that was our relationship.
Wow.
So as well as like all the events are real that happened, but then the characters and the people, they're sort of my own kind of writer stamp being
Mhm.
put on there, and me having to come up with personalities and characters to fit the story. So it was kind of an interesting. There's an interesting duality to the whole piece, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that it's the real stories from your family and then like mythological stories brought into it. Um, how did you, because I this is something I've thought about too. I have my grandpa before he passed away recorded a bunch of stories from his life on these little old like mini cassettes.
Yeah.
Um, and I have a bunch of his like letters to my grandma that he wrote when he was serving in World War II and
Oh wow.
I have a bunch of my mom's stories just from her life that she's recorded on just the a voice memo on my phone. And I feel like I want to bring these into some kind of story, but I don't know what I want to do with them. And it just feels so like, where do you even start? And how do you kind of weave in what's real and um, what's part of the story, I guess. So how did you even start with that? And how did you figure out what the narrative was going to be?
I mean, it's one of those things as well, I think, where like all of us, it takes a while. We take a little stab at it here and there
Mhm.
and maybe try and weave some kind of story structure together. And then, I mean, I was working on it since lockdown. I've been working on it since
Wow.
lockdown.
Mhm.
It's been a while. And I don't know. I mean, initially, I just wanted to do an autobiographical historical account of my grandparents' life. But the artist in me, I love mythology. I love that idea. And I love duality in different kinds of stories. So I was like, well, why don't I merge the two stories together so I can take the Vietnamese creation story about
Mhm.
Loch Lang Kwai, the Dragon King, and him meeting his fairy princess, and
Mhm.
that them being kind of their story mirroring my grandparents' story.
So
And so
cool.
then from that, you plot in the two stories together. You try and see where there are ties and where there you're right as
Oh,
well. It's such a long period of history. So
mhm.
it was important to select the correct bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And as I'm sure you're doing with
Mhm.
the cassettes and things, I
Yeah.
did. I interviewed my parents, and got them to interview relatives that I couldn't, get, and then did a lot of reading about the period in general. But then just let my imagination kind of go, and trusted that I know story, just like I guess you and everyone else does who are writers. They just trust that this feels right, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. I think that's it's really interesting that kind of being able to trust that feeling because I think that's a trap that I fall into is wanting to like overanalyze everything in my story outlines. And you do have to do a certain amount of outline and outlining and I do pretty detailed outlines actually, but there's like outlining and then there's kind of going beyond that where you're just sort of second guessing and I think being able to kind of trust that like no I've got the bones, I'm gonna be able to work the story out is important.
And I think that carries forth as well with like research. Like it's great to research, what you're talking about, but
Mhm.
it passes into the realms of procrastination, and
Yeah.
you just
Mhm.
need to get on with the story. You just need to. And I remember a couple of my teachers and just a couple of like guest lecturers and just even interviews online. Everyone says it, so I'm always wary of just doing it for too long. And you know what? I like getting my characters in a room and just kind of getting them to talk. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a script. It could just be a piece of paper, and I'll just jot some kind of a scene down, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you always go back and edit anyway, and you always go back and cut stuff out anyway. So just getting on at a certain point, just getting on with the story is important.
Totally. Yeah. So, but it was also kind of interesting as well. I mean, I'm not sure if it's been updated on the Kickstarter, but what was really cool as well is that I've got quite a few artists involved in this project. So I have
Yeah.
my general line artist, who's Hernan Gonzalez, and then I have my colorist, Damien, uh, who works on the colors, which we kind of really wanted to go for a really kind of specific art style where it's kind of black and red and there's primary colors involved there. But then also for the fantasy element. So that part of the story is very realist and using those two artists. Then for the fantasy story, I want to use a completely different style to represent that, give it a bit more of a cinematic fairy tale quality. So then my publisher managed to get Andrew Drillen, who's a bit more he's done quite a lot. I think he's done quite a bit for Marvel and Image and stuff like that. So we're just lucky to get him for a few pages. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I've been working with him as well. And there's just a really nice contrast between the two styles, which I like.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I noticed looking through the Kickstarter, like how different the pages are, and the fantasy pages are kind of more like pastel type colors and
Yeah.
um just stylistically it's so different. I think that's a really interesting choice. And the style of the kind of more real world pages too is really I feel it really gets across a particular tone.
Hmm.
What is it? What were you kind of thinking about when you were figuring out what you wanted that tone to be?
I wanted it to have a really kind of a realist tone about it. I wanted to have
Mhm.
kind of like a bit of a grungy dirtiness about it. I didn't want it to be all Marvel and pretty, and I generally don't usually want it to be pretty and Marvel usually.
Mhm.
I was just lucky though. I mean, we were talking before we started this interview about the pros and cons of social media.
Yeah.
And one of the pros is I've connected with so many interesting, amazingly talented artists like I never thought I would. The other side of the world. They're in Venezuela. They're in this. They're in that. So yeah, Hernan just I saw his work. He's mostly sort of a horror artist. He really likes horror. He works with them a lot, but he just enjoyed my story. We
Wow.
connected, and so yeah, we worked together. We're just lucky to get these people, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure in terms of with your comics and things, it's a really interesting process trying choosing the art style. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It is definitely. It's yeah, choosing the style for the book and then finding an artist who resonates with that style. It's an interesting process and it's fun and it's when you find that artist, it's always it's very cool to collaborate and see what they come up with and for sure.
Because, for instance, as well with the fancy elements, I totally wasn't thinking about the pastel thing at all.
Mhm.
I knew I wanted it to be different, but I was all like, because I always go back, I always go to watercolors. I always go to, oh, let's do watercolors. We do watercolors. Watercolors will make it really dreamlike and really awesome and stuff like that. And it always amazes me what I bring to the table.
Mhm.
And then the artist goes away and they bring something even better than I thought. And
Yeah.
that's why we do this. In my that's why I do this because it's not. That's why I went. I'm not making screenplays. I'm not going to try and write screenplays anymore. I'm not going to try and write theater anymore. I just want to do comics because that's
Mhm.
when the collaboration, when the synergy is there. It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that too. And I feel like there's a kind of a particular type of collaboration with a comics writer and a comics artist. It's a lot closer, I think, um, even than if you're a screenwriter, you don't have a lot of say later on in what the director does.
Mm.
Um, but with comics, you really do get to collaborate, and it's and I've had the same experience too. Just artists come up with things that are so much better than I would have imagined. And it's always surprising, and it's yeah, just the way that it can elevate the comic is always so cool.
Because we're almost like a producer, the writer or
Yeah.
the creator,
Hmm.
because we're bringing those people together almost, which I think a producer does really on a film. They
Yeah.
shepherd the project from. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah.
It is. It's an interesting process.
I had one thing that I read
Yes.
on your profile as well, which is interesting. You like poetry.
I do, yeah. I used to write I went to school for creative writing and my concentration was poetry. I used to write quite a bit of it. And I still do here and there, but and I love reading it.
I can give you my backstory in a spoken word poem if you want.
Yeah, that would be great.
5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes. It's a
Awesome.
comic. It's a poem about comics and my love for comics. And I'm just
Oh,
gonna
very cool.
plug in the thing just so I don't run out of battery. Um, I just thought I was like, oh, she likes poetry as well. What an interesting um thing to say and do. Here we go. I've been into comics since I was a kid, before all this Marvel DC adaptation bullshit hit. Forget film and TV moving images, it's all about the unified synergy of words and pictures. A literary super team up, creating fictions to rapture imaginations. Through school uniform and black tie work, I've always had my head between pages, forged with the intelligent craftsmanship of artist, writer, creatives. These 24-page coloured bits of paper have shared space with me through the ages. There are four. landmark reads that bookmark my life in stages. The first comic I'd like to mention is the dystopian political page turner Trans-Metropolitan, with a futuristic Hunter S. Thompson as its main character. I brought this comic with me, luckily, on hour-plus long-haul journeys to work as a customer service monkey at a call center company the other side of the city. Cattle-cramped carriages and commuter silences faded into the background, with my imagination spellbound. Because these comics are more than just paper and ink. They're linked to a safe space where my head can think and wait for the darker things on my plate to dissipate. My second selection is a zombie survival saga of The Walking Dead, which swam in my slipstream across two different decades as separate reading events. I began reading when my hopes of a film career got dashed, like the blood on the windshield of a car crash, and on the rebound found work at an obscene bar and grill team whose employment stunk like a scorched earth slaughter regime. A neighbouring graveyard gave me garden harmony to sit and read on my tea break, my back sunk against the bark of a maple tree's trunk. Because these comics are more than just paper and ink. They're linked to a safe space where my head can think and wait for the darker things on my plate to dissipate. The next time I picked up The Walking Dead was a million miles from home, in Melbourne, Australia, on a working holiday visa on my own. I was stuck between the termite crawling walls of a hostel, with new strangers coming and going with the consistency of a brothel. Each room had bodies piled high overhead, so I'd find privacy in pages with the curtains drawn to my bunk bed. Some nights I'd escape on the city's tram lines, comic under my arm, to meet strangers on dates and stay out till dawn's morning would wake. Because these comics are more than just paper and ink. They're linked to a safe space where my head can think and wait for the darker things on my plate to dissipate. The next comic book is the anti-superhero commentary known as The Boys, which occupied a large portion of my young adult life, like background noise. I bought the first 2.99 issue on my first week of university when the leaves dressed in an autumn-coloured burgundy. For 7 years each month, this comic kept me company, like the clockwork visits of a separated parent, mindful of custody. Through hang through through sorry through sandpaper breakups on campus halls and through hangover wake-up calls on shared house kitchen floors. Because these comics are more than just paper and ink. They're linked to a safe space where my head can think and wait for the darker things on my plate to dissipate. My final comic is the fantasy western known as Preacher, whose sunburnt pages encapsulate the perfect story for any reader. I grew up reading this comic on my cousin's acrylic carpet floor after borrowing it from his extensive comic collection drawer. While him and his collective crew would play games of FIFA World Tour, Abby sat in the corner and ignored, a cast-out orphan, but delving deep into this comic's allure. And as I grew older, my love for this comic endured. Reading it became an annual ritual of the tallest order. My usual plan is a Christmas read as the snow paints the land, wearing fingerless gloves to warm my hands. Because friends and relationships come and go, but comics have never left me in a park on my own. For a lone ranger like me, prone to isolation necessity, our relationship is a lifelong fixture. I can always curl into a corner with pages between my fingers, to be enveloped in a resplendent world of words and pictures. Because these comics are more than just paper and ink. Their panels and pages are synced to the lifeblood coursing through my veins. So we travel in parallel lanes through the pain and mundane of the day-to-day strains and journey forward through future gale force winds and rain until the end of my life's reign.
Wow, that was awesome.
Sorry about the hookup.
Cool,
I kind
cool.
of lost my way a little bit.
Oh, no worries. That was awesome. Those are some good influential comics.
I
But
do.
I mean, I feel the same way. It's I don't know, just the stories and the comics that have influenced me most. I mean, it's not just entertainment. It's it's something that I think impacts you on a deeper level.
I'm going to actually comic book festival in the UK. It's like one of the bigger ones called Thought Bubble. Um,
Oh, nice. That's exciting.
I've
Wow.
not been before, so it'd be really nice to connect
I
with
haven't
people.
been either, but I really want to at some point.
Oh, actually, this is interesting. So obviously, American or Canadian, I can never tell, so I don't want to. I'll say both because I don't want to say whether, and then I offend people. You American?
American, yeah.
Yeah, okay, you are American. Okay.
Hmm.
And do you live in the States?
I do. I live in Ohio.
Okay, sure. All right, yeah. But you have heard of Thought Bubble and you're thinking about you'd like to come at some
I
point.
have, yeah, I'd love to come see it at some point.
I think this year I think we've got James Tynan there, and there's a
Yeah,
couple of other
I think
people
I
as
saw
well.
that I saw him post something about that, I think.
Are you a fan of his or
I do. I love James Tynan. Everything that I read of his so far, I love it. I've read most. There are a few things I haven't read like Christopher Chaos yet, and I haven't read Wind. There are a few things, um, but the bulk of it, I think I have read.
you know the last house on
Yeah,
the one
I
he
that's I have Last House on the Lake one. I haven't read it yet, but or Nice House on the Lake. I haven't. No, Nice House by the Sea, number one.
that's
Haven't gotten to. By the Lake, I have read.
I think that's my favorite thing he's written.
It's so good.
So good, yeah. Because like I with him, I'm sort of some things I really like, some things I'm less interested by.
Hmm.
But that for me was like, oh yeah, and also his
Yeah,
Batman stuff. I was really surprised
yeah.
because I stopped reading Batman stuff because I was like, and then Tom King kind of came along, and then also James Tynion, and I was like, oh, these people are doing really interesting
Yeah.
things.
Hmm.
Not always successful, but just really interesting,
Like
and just like
different. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm. Like
like
his
so Tom.
Joker series was so good.
Absolutely.
Um, and the Deviant I've been reading is so creepy, but so good.
I've heard people absolutely losing their minds for it. I've read the first issue. I'm kind of waiting for it to come out in maybe graph, and I'll just read it all together rather than.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, it's like the Santa Claus and like yeah, it's quite
So
twisted. And I
creepy.
think it's an interesting play on sexuality as well.
Yeah. Hmm.
He,
Which is,
he,
mhm.
sorry, I know I lost you then. I didn't hear what you
Oh,
said.
sorry. Yeah, yeah, it is, which is really another interesting part of it for sure. Hmm.
So what stuff have you got? What are you working on at the minute? Anyway, I don't want to talk about myself all the time.
Um, I feel like I feel like my brain is in so many different places, but I just finished the Kickstarter for a sci-fi anthology that I did with lesser known comics. Um, so I'm going to be doing fulfillment for that soon. Issue 4 of my series No Spell Lasts Forever is easy to Savino just started on the pencils for that. So that'll probably be out in the spring. Um, and then I'm working on some Mad Cave stuff, which I'm
Mm.
excited about. Um, so yeah, got some stuff going on.
Awesome. It's good. It's like that kind of thing where you're like, yes, I need to have many comic projects that I'm like toiling with and messing around with, you know?
Yeah, I feel like I do need to. And it's funny, like I didn't necessarily set out to do it that way. Like I kind of imagined that I would stagger things more, that I'd kind of go from one to the next more. But I just kind of ended up having a bunch of stuff going at once. But I do think that I like that. I like being able to kind of switch modes and go back and forth. And um, yeah, like one of the Mad Cave things that I'm working on is a middle grade thing, which is so different from the other stuff that I'm doing, but I like being able to kind of switch back and forth like that.
What do you mean by middle grade?
Kind of like middle school. I think it's maybe
Oh, I see.
something
Oh,
like
you mean schooling
fifth
kind
or
of.
eighth
Oh, okay.
grade, that range.
YA, a YA novel, young
It's like
adult.
slightly younger than
Oh,
YA.
okay, sure. Okay, yeah, cool. I
Which
think
I've never really done before, but I'm having fun with it, and it's so different from other stuff I'm working on. But
but that'll allow you to stretch your writing
yeah,
muscle, isn't it? So, I mean, sometimes it's just like, yeah, I'd like to try something different. Every time I get a whiff of me doing something similar, and to be honest, there are some things that I've gone through with and I'm about to complete, and I can see the parallels in other things, but I do try and stretch myself if I can, not just do the
yeah.
same book again and again, you know. Like we all really like uh you know the
Mhm.
writer of West Wing?
Mm.
Aaron Sorkin, thank you. We
Aaron
all
Sorkin,
love
yes,
Aaron Sorkin's writing. It's
yeah.
incredible. It's
Mhm.
amazing. He's an incredible writer. However,
Mhm.
he writes the same thing
True.
again and again,
Yeah.
relatively. I mean, Social Net was completely different, but like Sports Night is basically Studio 60, and then News Night is kind of a more serious version of Studio 60. So
Yeah.
it's just like, dude, just try and do something different. Your writing is amazing, but just try and do something a bit, you know.
Hmm.
I just
Yeah.
find it interesting. Yeah.
It is really interesting. I remember an interview with Chip Starsky once where he was talking
Um,
about how he's done so many different things. Like he did Daredevil, but then he's done like I don't know, just comedy humor stuff, and it's so different. Um, and how he like a part of him always felt that maybe he should kind of like try to do things that are more similar and for like personal branding purposes, but he's like
I
creatively, that's just not
I listened to that. I listened to that podcast interview. I listened to that podcast
funny.
interview. Because he was saying he was comparing himself. I think it was to Brubaker because he was like, yeah, Brubaker's got a brand.
Yeah.
He's a noir guy. I mean, he can do
Hmm.
other things, but he definitely is a noir guy, and it's always good.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be good.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why I like to pick and choose with Chip. Like, there's some things
Hmm.
that work for me, and other things I'm just like, I'm sure it's really well written, just not my thing. You know what I mean? Just
Which is
sometimes go,
fine.
yeah.
He's done Howard the Duck and now he's doing
That
Batman.
was
So
I told my friend that because he likes Howard the Duck, and he was like, "What? There's Howard." I was like, "Yeah, man, seriously. There's this writer, and he's done Howard the Duck." It was crazy.
funny.
So I also kind of what I found really interesting recently was thinking about all the different writers who've done Batman, and
Hmm.
now I'm kind of getting to understanding who I am as a writer. I'm still obviously new. I'm not getting paid for this yet. We're all still doing. I'm still doing a day job. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like
Hmm.
I I know what my Batman would be if I wrote
Hmm.
it, and
Yeah.
I really enjoyed understanding that and knowing that. You know what I mean? Like because
Yeah.
I look at like Scott Snyder, and he's got his own thing, and then you look at as I said, James Tynion and things like that. Mine would be a horror series. It would be horror
Nice.
Batman. It would be, Dave McKee, A Serious House for Serious People, Arkham Asylum. That's what I want because I've never seen a comic book that's done that. Grant Morrison and Dave McKee, like the first time I saw it, I was like, this is a piece of art. And it's
Yeah.
so horrific and horrible, but in an incredible way. I
That's
would
awesome.
totally try and get Dave McKee to just draw my Batman.
Nice. I like it. I would support that.
Thank you.
I think Batman is one of those ones where if you write comics, you kind of can't help think about what would my Batman story be.
Yeah, it's the tent pole for like everyone's got their version of Batman kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
What's your favorite Batman writer?
Uh, I think Tynan is one of them. I really love Scott Snyder. I like a bunch of the old, like the Nightfall, like Chuck Dixon stuff.
I've got those graphs and I grew up with them and I love the way they draw Bane, how he's just
Just hulk.
enormous.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I know. And Nightfall and then Night's End, isn't it? I think it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm yeah, that's pretty good, you said. I imagine Miller as well. Frank Miller, because you said year one.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Year one.
I do like to throw. I mean, I'm not really that fond of it now, Jeff Loeb that much now, but
Hmm.
that
Jeff Loeb,
first
yeah. It's hard
long
to pick. There's so
Halloween,
many great writers. Yeah.
yeah, just
Hush and
good. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, it's okay. So I feel like maybe I should talk about my comic a bit
Yeah,
more. I don't
let's
know,
circle back
but
yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
I mean, the Kickstarter's going now anyway. So yeah, anyone who wants to support that'd be great. And I've got lots of little rewards, different kinds of rewards. So one of my rewards is I will write you a poem, a spoken word poem, and I'll perform it. Whatever subject matter you want. Just give
That's
me like
awesome.
2 weeks. Just give me 2 weeks, I'll do it. And and then also, I don't know about you, but I really like the immersion of when you're immersed in a comic and you're really in there with the characters. And for me, some of the best times I've had reading comics have been when I've had a really good, awesome piece of music on. that's
Mhm.
just sort of really captured that and just paralleled what I'm reading. So I got a couple of two of the comics I'm doing recently, including View of the Phoenix Trees, got composers to
That's
do sort of
awesome.
like a soundtrack while
Wow.
people are reading. So like there'll be like a kind of a SoundCloud or Vimeo link in there. And so you can
Mhm.
just type in, or like a maybe I'll do code, might do a thingy code, and you can just scan it, and then it'll come up, and you can listen while you
That's
read it.
very cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
But
So
I just,
that's
it's not really like, yeah, I wouldn't say it's not like I haven't started it or done it first. There's like an artist in IMDb who's mates with Ben Temple Smith,
mhm.
and I think his name's Mento, and he's like it's his stuff is very Ashley Wood. It's like really
Mhm.
art stuff. But he's a soundtrack. He makes music as well, so he did it, and that's what gave
Wow.
me the idea. And he with his album, you got two CDs with it. And it's
Oh,
just like,
nice.
that's like, yeah.
That's cool. Because I've thought about that with just the comics that I'm reading or comics that I'm writing. Like I wish I could have a scene where you can hear this song playing. That's very cool.
I think like everyone's done it, and only a couple of us crazy people are like, damn it,
Actually did it.
I'm gonna get a soundtrack artist, I'm gonna find it, it's gonna work. But it's kind of tough as well because like online, like you have to go into a completely different sphere and you have to go find like soundtrack artists online, and it's
Mhm.
completely different. And then there's pay structures and things like that. But I connected with two really nice soundtrack artist guys, and they've been really supportive and cool.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Very
Yeah.
cool. Um, I saw that you're doing metal covers too.
Oh yeah. Um, it was my publisher's idea, and I was
Nice.
like, yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, I think back at home, my parents' home, with my boxes of single edition comics, I've got one or two good metal covers. So I was like, oh, that's a
Wow.
perfect idea. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know the process, but I'm sure my publisher will sort it out. But I was like, yeah, that'd be totally cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they're so cool. I love the metal covers, and I've thought about doing it for my comic, but the whole process of like getting them done just seems intimidating. But
Yeah.
it's something that I think would be really cool to do eventually.
How many? Okay, so here's an interesting one. How many variants did you have you done in your comic?
The last one had, what did we have? Three.
Three.
The earlier issues all had two.
Sure.
So,
That's kind
yeah,
of
right.
pretty.
I should double check that and make sure I've got the right issue for that. But
Yeah, that's pretty much the same as me. I mean, so for a few of the Phoenix trees, there's three. Managed to get three sort of. My publisher managed to get three guest artists for that. But then for this other so I did actually a comic before this, but
Mhm.
I changed publisher, so it hasn't been published yet. So, but we are going to publish it. It's like a little horror comic. But for that one, I did two alternative covers as well.
Nice.
It's that kind of thing because like people say like do as many as you can because then you're going to get larger audience because people are going to buy more covers. But as
Yeah.
well, it's really expensive,
I know that's
and
the thing.
you know because
Yeah.
you
That's
want a
the hard
good
part.
cover that's going to bring people along, but then it's going to
Yeah.
like I poached one guy online. I approached him and was like, oh, just wondering if you'd be interested in this project, blah blah blah. And I saw, and then he sent me his price back, and I was like, I'm not even going to ask you for a discount because
Mhm.
your work is so good that it would be a
Yeah.
smear on it. And even if I asked for a discount, I couldn't afford it with a discount. I can't remember which artist it was, but he's just it was like $500 per page.
Wow.
I was like, I can't do it. I'm sorry. I'd love to, but
Yeah. It's like how many can you do and still expect to like make up what you spent on them? That's
and
the
it's weird
that's
as
the
well
math.
because and it's interesting as well because like sometimes it works out obviously easier and cheaper just to get one
Mhm.
artist to do everything. But sometimes you can just swing it where you can get a colorist and then an inker or a colorist and then inker and penciler, and that's cheaper. So it really depends.
Yeah. It depends on, yeah, on what their rates are and how much you need from each of them. And it always can, it's different.
Hmm.
from project to project. Um, so was there anything else about the book or about the campaign that you wanted to be sure to chat about?
Yeah, let me just think. I mean, those are kind of the rewards we've got. We've got those alternative covers. A lot of them as well, because I really like doing this with comics at the back with your, the letters section, if
Hmm.
possible. I really like adding in sketches, things like that. For this
Yeah.
one, it'll be sketches and things like that, but it'll also be sort of pictures of my family, who they're based
Oh, that's
on, things
cool.
like
That's so
that.
neat.
I thought it'd be kind of cool just to because I've got those pictures and things from my parents that I did when I did my research. So I want to try and include that as well in there if possible.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
really cool.
and then when the project's finished as well, if we do manage to get it into a graph, then there'll be a lot more. Obviously, we'll be able to have a lot more pages to put at the back and a lot more interesting kind of like bits of information. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's and just so neat that you have all of that to draw from and to bring into the book.
Yeah, I mean it's quite good because I like there wasn't too much to go through. There was enough so that it got me started and got me kind of working and gave me story avenues to go down. But if you got too much, you just, as we
Yeah.
said, you don't know where to start. So then you just start procrastinating because you carry on doing the research and looking at this research.
Yeah.
So I was quite happy that I didn't have that. That it was immediate family, but there was a lot of stuff that I couldn't get in touch with certain family members, so I had to
Hmm.
just go with it and just make up stuff or read about stuff myself.
Yeah. Wow, very
Mm.
cool. I know that's kind of the process, the point that I'm at with these like
Mm.
letters and mini cassettes and stuff. I'm like, there's so much. Like I obviously can't include it all, but like how much and where would I even start? And would I just do like a small piece of it or would I like hop around in time? I have no idea. And every time I try to think about it, it's like it's too much. I don't know.
So my advice would be all the bits that are interesting to you, start with that. Start
Yeah,
with
I
the bits
like
that are
that.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just see if a structure forms from that. So I had to because it's like 30, mine's like 30 years. I had to jump around. So the book does jump around a lot. So the characters, there's kind of roughly three stages where they're young, they're middle-aged, and then they're old. I mean,
Mhm.
the parents anyway. I mean, the kids are respective, like
Mhm.
that ages anyway, that way. So that I had to do that. Whereas maybe you can like condense it into one little small area. Like that film Lee that came out with Titanic lady. I can't remember her name right now.
Oh,
Kate Winslet.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Mhm.
about war. It's about that photographer who, female photographer who photographed lots of pictures in World War
Mhm.
II. Now, the book is massive, and there's a long period in time where she's photographing um, people, things, events. But they decided with that film just to distill it down to one specific bitter moment, the most interesting and most pivotal point of the war,
Mm,
rather than everything. So there's that way as well. I guess you could go with it as well. Yeah.
yeah, I like that because it's just when there's so much, it's like trying to include too much is just like then nothing gets enough attention.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's a really interesting and consummate artist who's able just to distill down
Yeah.
exactly what they're trying to say. I mean, if you
Mhm.
can do that with a long, sprawling epic, that's cool as well. But sometimes it's really good to just have a really tight piece of drama as well.
Yeah,
Different stuff.
yeah, for sure.
Cool.
So how much longer is the campaign live for?
We have got 6 days left. So anyone
Exciting.
wants to get their rewards, anyone wants to be part of this fantastic story, yeah, just head over to. I mean, all you have to do is really type into Google View of the Phoenix Trees Kickstarter, and it'll pop up, and you can have a look at some of the fantastic rewards we have that I've already spoken about and things, and just get the comic. I mean, the story I think is really interesting and entertaining, and the characters are kind of cool. So yeah,
Yeah, definitely. And I'll put the link in the notes for the show too.
Oh, thank you so much. Cool. That's
Um,
awesome.
and everyone should go check it out. It's a really cool story and very cool art and lots of cool rewards.
Thank you so much. Thanks, thanks. It's been fun
Awesome.
talking anyway.
Yeah, it's been great.
And it's always nice just to actually have a little chat about just other than like, the business, which we were supposed to talk about my comic for, but it's always quite nice just to have a little chat about favorite comics as well. That's always fun.
Yeah, it's always fun to chat comics. Yeah, well, thanks for coming on. This has been great.
It's been awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.